You wanted to be so hungry you would break into branches.
It's day 53 of the national emergency. Are you still out there? I miss you. I really, really miss you. You know who I miss today? The guacamole makers and the mariachi bands at Tequila Sunrise in Bayside. Oh! Our family had so many awesome times there. Really, you can't believe it. I can't wait to go back. All right, it's Tuesday. It's Cinco de Mayo. It's Giving Tuesday. It's still the holy month of Ramadan. And engineering, has Mitchell Kahn reported any other kind of day?
Not yet, sir.
All right, nothing yet from Mitchell Kahn. Usually, I don't know, it could be Spaghetti Day. I'm not sure. Kazim Ali is going to be with us. We had a great interview with him. He's going to read his poem Ramadan for us. Amazing poem, amazing interview. Dr. Ann O'Connell is going to be here to help us make some sense out of these numbers coming at us from the COVID pandemic. And young Joseph, has started a new segment about games, trying to keep us entertained while we shelter at home. And oh yeah, I've been having these wonderful smells coming from the kitchen area all day. We're going to have some recipes for Cinco de Mayo. But let's get this whole night kicked off the right way with a song by Leah Morris and her pals. This is, Leah has an hour-long concert on Thursday, Facebook Live concert. You can check that out. It's in the events section of Facebook. You can find Leah's information in the credits on our page. And she and her friends, this is I Can See Clearly Now We're About to Roll, featuring Eric Scott, Ed.D. Montalvo, Eric Schnobrick, Elizabeth Safley, Brinker. Dig on this.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day. Look all around, nothing but blue sky. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue sky. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
Awesome. Now you can see more music like that at Leah's Facebook concert on Thursday. She's starting at 6. She goes 6 to 7. That gives you plenty of time to grab something to eat and then catch dispatches at 8. All right now, we've all had a lot of numbers thrown at us with this pandemic, and Dr. Ann O'Connell is going to help us make sense of some of them. Here we go. Oops. Here we go again. There we are. Hello, Ann.
Hi, Scotty.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So, just big eternal question before we get into the nitty-gritty. How many statisticians does it take to change a light bulb?
Well, Scott, that really depends on how certain you want your answer to be.
There it is. There it is. You know, I was on a course to be a statistician, but they just kept talking about it being mean all the time. It was mean this, mean that. I didn't feel like it was going to be a place for me.
Yeah, we've gotten better since then.
All right, so coronavirus by the numbers. Where do we start?
Well, one of the sites that I like to use is called worldometer.info, and has a lot of stats and data on all sorts of issues, but they've got a really, very powerful collection of data on the coronavirus.
Okay, so let's take a look. There we are. So this is from Worldometers, and it's the distribution of cases worldwide of the pandemic. And one of the most glaring things that jumps right out at you is the United States has 33.24% of the cases.
Right. So right now in the U.S. we've topped 1 million, and out of all the world cases, there's about 3.7 million. We have the largest share right now. But we can also kind of zone in and look on stats for each country from this site. Mm-hmm. So look a little deeper.
And so also what we're looking at, 1.2 million. We're also seeing that about 73% of the people who have had, this is the United States, the disease, have recovered or been discharged. 27%, unfortunately, have died.
Right.
And with the closed cases chart that we see, very late March, the number of people who began recovering finally went north, while the people who were dying had gone south.
Right. So of those closed cases, those are really tracking the known outcomes. That's so that number doesn't include anyone who wasn't hospitalized or for who we don't currently right now know the outcome. But right. Yeah, we definitely are seeing a flip around early April.
And it's good that you mentioned known outcomes, because I think later on in this discussion we're going to see that we really get bogged down with the things that we don't know. One of the places that's also, I'm going to put up the New York Times map of the United States right now. The New York Times has done a wonderful job keeping this updated, fresh numbers. And of course, we see the areas that have been problematic, but if you've been looking at this map over time, there's definitely a push westward.
Yep, that's clear from the map. But you can also see that from this data display that some of the areas that are a bit more dense are the ones that are reaching towards this soft opening.
Right, which this is why, as we were talking, we wanted to pull up the Georgia, it's not a map, but it's a chart. Here's the Georgia chart, and what we're seeing now is from about April 3rd to about today, May 5th, the projection is that based on the numbers beforehand, we were on a steep decline downward.
Right. So from this chart, we can see the blue lines on this chart are the newly confirmed cases, and the orange line is a 7-day average. So it gives a better picture of the trend. But what's interesting about this particular display is that the 14-day window, which is over towards the right, that doesn't include any cases that haven't yet been diagnosed or that we don't know the outcome of. So that 14-day window is includes people who haven't yet been confirmed.
Right, and that 14-day window is just one of the things that makes this particular disease super tricky to kind of get a handle on.
Right, because that's the infection time, incubation time. Sorry.
Right. So that incubation time, plus the thing that's been nagging at me this whole time. Like, I appreciate that. You know, I feel like as an American citizen who pays attention to the news and things, I'm used to getting sand thrown in my eyes. I'm used to being told, look over here, when maybe the problem is right in front of us. And one of the things that gets kicked around but also swept under the rug is this notion of testing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are we supposed to trust these numbers if we don't have the testing by many, many accounts that we need?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so we looking at the numbers that we have that we're going on in the US, we need to really be aware of data quality because we don't know that underlying base rate.
Right. And one of the things that we want to look into that becomes our bedrock once the information gets a little bit clearer is the R naught, right? I'm starting to hear a lot about the R naught right now.
So that's a number that really kind of simply captures how infectious a disease might be. And there's a great clip by Angela Merkel, and she describes it really well. So can we watch that?
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Rolling
Die
now.
Kurve ist flacher geworden. Es bleibt nach wie vor so, sie muss so sein, dass sie unser Gesundheitssystem nicht überfordert. Und wir haben Modellbetrachtungen gemacht. Wir sind jetzt ungefähr bei diesem Reproduktionsfaktor 1, also einer steckt einen an, der natürlich auch nicht, das kann ich immer nur für eine Infektionskette sagen, ob einer einen ansteckt, das ist dann ein Mittelwert, aber es ist ungefähr einer steckt einen an. Schon wenn wir darauf kommen, dass jeder 1,1 Menschen ansteckt, dann sind wir im Oktober wieder an der Leistungsfähigkeit unseres Gesundheitssystems mit den angenommenen Intensivbetten. Wenn wir 1,2, also jeder steckt 20% mehr, 1,2 an, also von 5 Menschen steckt einer 2 an und 4 ein. Dann kommen wir im Juli schon an die Belastungsgrenze unseres Gesundheitssystems und bei 1,3, das hört sich nicht viel, wir kommen von 4, 5 Ansteckungen, 3 bis 5 Ansteckungen. 1,3 sind wir im Juni an der Belastungsgrenze unseres Gesundheitssystems. Daran sehen Sie also, in welch kleinem Spielraum wir uns aufhalten. Und die ganze Entwicklung basiert darauf, dass wir davon ausgehen, dass wir eine Infektionszahl haben, die wir überblicken können, die wir nachverfolgen können und dass wir mehr Schutzkonzepte haben und durch die mehr Schutzkonzepte auch mehr Lockerungen machen können. Aber es ist ein dünnes Eis, wie Herr Tschentscher gesagt hat, oder eine fragile Situation oder wirklich eine Situation, in der Vorsicht das Gebot ist und nicht Übermut.
Yeah. That was very clear. You know, she started off by explaining what their current situation was, and this was back in late March, beginning of April, projecting forward, and just those razor thin margins of what a difference in half a point in the R naught would mean.
Yeah, can really makes a difference.
You know, I have this one other graph, and this is from Wikipedia. You know, I just went straight there to begin to get my head around this, and it has two basic charts. It shows Ebola with an R naught of 2, and it explains that patient 0 infects 2 and then 2 more. SARS had an R naught of 4, and then you can see how much more rapidly things progress through a society with an R naught of 4.
So these pictures too, they show us what happens in the absence of any intervention. So if we can really be strict about our own social distancing, we can really change the R naught number for the COVID.
Right, and so you had sent me some other statistics. Seasonal flu is about a 1.28. The Spanish flu, which we know was around for years and did a lot of damage, that was like a mean of 2, like a 1.4 to a 2.8. Corona, what some of the best estimates are saying right now is a 2 to 2.5. But then other numbers that you sent suggested a 3.2, which is somewhere between a 1.9 and a 6.5.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of data coming in. So what we're looking at with the corona is data from different countries, and the range just gives you the distribution of what that number appeared in several different countries or settings. So we still don't have an exact number for that.
Right. And so if I'm not mistaken, the thing that we need is more testing in order to get a more accurate number. Is that correct?
For R naught, we need to know how many people are infected, and that way we can project how many or predict how many they're infecting, if we can keep track of that number. But at any rate, we want it to go down, and the best way to do that is the social distancing.
Right. And so the thing to do now is to be watching the charts, because as these soft rollouts happen, it's really just these charts that are going to let us know whether it's working or we're going to have to hunker for a little longer.
Absolutely. And be mindful of the quality of the data. The Worldometer, I think that data is really solid, and it's scraped from public health websites across the globe. But still, if we don't have a high proportion of people being tested, it's still unclear what those numbers really mean.
Yeah. So we'll post the Worldometer. Gosh, I practice. This is the thing I practiced all day. The Worldometer's website, so people can get to it. And then just one last question: how was the weekend? You had a big graduation. There's another bachelor out in the world.
Yep, Delaney had a great day. Very proud of her. Hi, Delaney.
Hi, Delaney. High five. Woo!
Woo!
That's great. And Mezzy?
She's doing great. She's studying from home and walking the dogs right now.
That's awesome. Well, Dr. Ann, thank you very much for just taking this time to help. I mean, it's really complicated, dense stuff, and it was really great to have someone to help show us the way, really.
Thank you, Scotty. Hope you have a great rest of the time. Love you.
Thank you. And we'll check back in as these numbers change, get some more clarity.
Sounds good.
All right, Ann. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Tricky little thing, that one. And that was great. It's important to get a little bit of clarity as this thing begins to spread out all around us. Now, Skype and Zoom are important ways that we're all staying in touch together. But young Joseph, who is a PhD candidate by day, and he's also a PhD candidate by night, I guess. I don't know. In between all the quantum mechanics, he is also our resident games expert. So he's going to be here on and off throughout the shows to show us the latest and the greatest, but also the funnest.
Hi everyone, the first game that we're going to take a look at is Scribble.io. Scribble.io advertises itself as a free, multiplayer drawing and guessing game. Scribble.io is a Pictionary style game where players guess a word that another player is drawing. You can play Scribble.io with a random group of people by just joining a random room, or you can create a private room on the main page and share the link at the bottom to invite your friends and family. Our favorite way to play this game is to have two devices going, one to host a group video call so everyone can talk, the other device used to control the game. We found that a laptop is a little easier to be able to see the whole screen, but a tablet can be slightly easier to draw since you can use your fingers. You can create an avatar once you get onto the page, customize that, set your name, and then hop into the game. The game has a fixed number of rounds where each person gets a turn to draw. You can change brushes, colors, or even use an eraser or trash the whole drawing using the tools at the bottom of the screen. A player's turn ends when either the clock runs out or everyone has guessed the word correctly. The number of letters in a clue can be seen at the top of the screen, fill in the blank style, and a few of the letters will even be revealed as the time runs out. The faster people guess, the more points you'll get. Since this game is spelling, little kids may need a little bit of help. But overall, we rate this game FF for family fun, with the small caveat, of course, that if you're going to play in the random lobbies with random people, it is an uncontrolled environment. Your first round of playing the game might be used a little bit for just figuring out the mechanics, where the buttons are, how guessing works, but we found that pretty much everyone is able to catch on after a couple. We give this game a playability rating of EZ because there's very little learning curve and you can learn as you play. We at Dispatches give this game a rating of 1,000 quarks. Have fun and enjoy Scribble.io.
It's Cinco de Mayo, and our resident Dispatches chef has some tasty ideas in the kitchen to help you celebrate the holiday.
Happy Cinco de Mayo! One of my favorite Cinco de Mayo recipes. What you're gonna need: a bag of chips and a bowl. Now, I like a deep bowl. What you're gonna do, first, wash your hands. I've already washed mine. Shake the bowl, give the bowl a shake. Perfect. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Now back to you.
Well, wait a second. Aren't you going to do something with those tomatoes and those peppers and everything?
Chips in a bowl. Now back to you.
That was interesting. Aren't you going to have a sip of that beer?
You mean the Corona? Oh, no thank you. No, none for me. I don't want it. I don't want any.
It's okay. It's the holidays.
Now back to you.
Okay. I don't know why he didn't want any of that beer. I swear I smelled something great coming from the kitchen, and it wasn't a bowl of chips. All right. As we all know, it's still the holy month of Ramadan, and Kazim Ali is a poet and professor of literature at UC San Diego. His poem Ramadan is amazing, and he was very generous enough to speak with me and read his poem.
Okay, this is the poem Ramadan. You wanted to be so hungry you would break into branches and have to choose between the starving months, 19th, 21st, and 23rd evenings. The liturgy begins to echo itself, and why does it matter? If the groundwater is too scarce, one can stretch nets into the air and harvest the fog. Hunger opens you to illiteracy. Thirst makes clear the starving pattern. The thick night is so quiet. The spinning spider pauses. The angel stops whispering for a moment. The secret night could already be over. You will have to listen very carefully. You are never going to know which night's mouth is sacredly reciting and which night's recitation is secretly mere wind.
That was wonderful. The line that you wrote, "Hunger opens you to illiteracy," really struck me. What is it about fasting that strikes, so deep at our humanity?
The concept of illiteracy has two dimensions here, right? So Ramadan is just a month out of the year, like September or what have you. It became a sacred month because it was the month in which the Quran was revealed, during which time Muslims were enjoined to participate in the fast. And that idea of illiteracy is connected to the orality of the Arabic culture and the historical belief that the Prophet Muhammad was illiterate. So the Quran was an oral text. And for many years, it was always an orally transmitted text. At some point during the caliphate of Usman, who was the third caliph after the Prophet died, that he decreed that there be a definitive version. There was created a canonical version of the Quran. One quality of Islam is who has access to the written, and that the oral was considered, at one point was considered sacred, but then it was removed. And so I think about illiteracy as an actual position of potential to have one's own personal relationship with the divine, because the canon of written texts that are considered holy or sacred, that define political life and social life and create laws that are then supposed to govern the community, they're removed between you and God. So, in one case, Moses actually took the written tablets and threw them at disobedient people to destroy them. So that story is in the Quran also, and that's like the metaphor for the written text taking place of a more dynamic relationship between the human and the divine. And so, for me, illiteracy is a position of privilege. That hunger opens you to illiteracy. That divorcing yourself from the material fact of the world, like fasting from food and drink in daylight hours, it literally changes your relationship to the physical world around you, and it does create in somebody a more contemplative state or a meditative state. I think that's the best of what Ramadan can offer. I don't know that everybody who fasts if that is their goal or if that's where they end up. But for me, that's a magical thing that happens. And you only get it in the day after day-ness of the month. People, and those juice fasts, right? People will do them for 5, 7, 10 days sometimes. But we're talking about 30 full days of fasting every single day during daylight hours. So it's not even like this ongoing fast of 24 hours. It's this consistent intermittent fast. And it really can be a foundation for a spiritual or contemplative personal engagement. So it is meant to be a transformative. It's not just supposed to be like, oh, we're just going to skip lunch, and it's not supposed to be an easy thing to do,
Right. It's a way for the human to transcend our experience and participate in the divine.
Yes, but not in the context of the mortification of the flesh. It's not that. It's not a purification ritual. It's like a religious practice, like doing a prayer or something. It's not the Yom Kippur fast of like atonement. We're not like trying to make up for something. It's different. It's a different.
One of the days in the latter portion of the holiday, as I understand it, the actual book was delivered, so to speak. And you make reference to that earlier in the poem.
Yes, that's one of my favorite parts, which is so not necessarily the whole book was revealed, but when the first verse of it was revealed. The directive from the angel where he says, "Oh, recite, say this." A version of repeat after me, like he's going to teach him the Quran. Give praise to the one who created you. The one who created you is often translated as God, which sets you up with a whole host of expectations. Created you from clots of blood. And then it describes after 40 days, God blew breath into the clot and it grew. And so a lot of scientists look at those descriptions in the Quran and advocate for that description as how a body, how a cell actually grows in the womb and becomes but that idea of God creating a man from a clot of blood, as opposed to, God created Adam, the first man, and Eve, the first woman. That's not how a human is created in the Quran. It's a wild, inspirational little verse. And so it was revealed on what's called Laylatul Qadr, which is alternately translated as the night of power or the night of majesty. It's like the big night, basically, the special night. And the great part about it is, by oral tradition, it was supposed to be an odd-numbered night in the third week of the month. That's the definition for when this night was. It wasn't given as a specific day, because we don't know really what night it is. We do it on all 3 nights. But the truth of the tradition is that it exists because we don't really know which night it was, and so we celebrate it on all 3 nights. And there's something really fabulous about both the indeterminacy of that, because it goes back to that early kind of unfixity that I talked about at the heart of Islam, which is true. It was very, very individual, and there were multiple strands and multiple teachers, and there's no canonical Islam. So the irony of the term Muslim fundamentalist is there was no fundamental Islam. It didn't exist. There were always different. So that was a complete offshoot. Then there was this whole other thing happening in the north, and then there were the Arabian Muslims and the Syrians, and it just sort of, as it spread, it was interpreted in so many different ways. So it's a very, very rich religion with a whole panoply of interpretive practices and beliefs. It's very fabulous. And the crime of it is when it gets reduced to just being one thing, by the people inside it and the people outside it. So I love the fact that this most important holiday of all is not even on one day. And it's you just have to repeat it and doing it over again. Then there's also a richness around the repetition of let's do it then, let's do it again, let's do it again. And that reminds me of the dailiness of the fast and the fact that you don't get full power until you do it for 30 days. So then this night, let's do it 3 times. Third time's a charm, So there's something also attractive about that for me as well.
And so have you been participating since childhood?
For girls, it's supposedly when they turn 9, they're supposed to start doing this stuff. And for boys, it's when they turn 15. I always loved doing all the religious stuff. And then I was the middle boy of 2 girls. So when my sister turned 9, she started doing everything with my parents, but I wanted in. So I started right away. I was about 7. So when I was a child, Ramadan was in July. When I wrote my book about Ramadan, it's called Fasting for Ramadan, nonfiction book about the practice of fasting, it was in October. When I was about 27 and living at home again after many years, it was in December. So that not only does the fast change through the month of doing it, it also changes through one's lifetime. It was a family occasion. So at night when we break our fast, it's called iftar, we would all gather at someone's house, and there'd be kind of like a feast, kind of like a party. So that was really special. And when I was living in Oberlin, I was having iftars at my house for the Muslim students because many of them were international. And that was really special because I was openly gay even at that time. And it was special for me to be able to provide for my community, but it was also transformative for some of them because they were very lonely and were separated from their tradition and in high school. We don't say that anymore. We used to say that in the 80s, foreign exchange student. No, she was an international scholar. That's what we would say now. She was an international scholar from Indonesia, And she came to the first session. She was wearing a baseball hat. She had her hair in a bun, and it was under the baseball hat. And I was like, okay, this is with her traditional dress. And I thought, this is like kind of a modern look. Like she's getting excited about being in America. Okay, let's go for this. And we spent our time together. And then the next week she came back, and this time she was wearing her regular hijab. And it was kind of amazing because after the dinner was over, so we had the dinner and everything, and then she came over as she was leaving, and she said, I wanted to tell you that when I first came over, I was wearing that baseball hat because like I didn't know if people in America would accept me, like this was 2007, so it was still, it was I'm sorry, 2009, but it was still when things were like a little different, you know. I mean, it's still bad now in terms of anti-Muslim sentiment, but she said, I wasn't sure. I didn't feel really comfortable wearing my hijab. But then I came here and I saw how open you were with all of us. And then your boyfriend, you know, my partner, boyfriend, whatever, he was there also, would come to these. They all met him as well. And she said, I just felt like you were your own kind of Muslim. And that taught me that I could be the kind of Muslim that I'm supposed to be here in America. So it was kind of like powerful moment for me. So that kind of community building is also part of our Ramadan. Like, it is privilege to provide food for people. It's privilege to have an iftar and invite people over and feed them. And so people will rotate it so everyone gets a turn at feeding everyone else. So I miss that. And the times when I've been in communities where I haven't been as connected with the Muslim community, I've missed like doing the fast as part of something.
How have things changed during a pandemic?
I was worried that fasting during quarantine would be insanely difficult, but I have to say it's actually felt easier. I'm home, I'm just doing work, I'm comfortable, I don't have to go anywhere. The other thing about Ramadan, which I mentioned with the iftar, but in general, it's a huge community building exercise. This practice originated in the Middle East. Mostly people were staying at home during daylight hours. They weren't going out, you know? This poem and my book, the book of essays, Fasting for Ramadan, those are things that are out in the world that are doing that community building work for me. So people are will read the poem and reach out as you did, or with the fasting book, people reach out or tweet. All over Twitter, people do this thing of like daily blogging their Ramadans or tweeting their Ramadans, and it's like a way of, even if we're isolated, we can at least read each other's texts and participate in some way, interact with each other in some way, and share our experience. This is a poem that's very much about that act of reflection between people. Like, what is Ramadan for? Why do people fast? What is the goal of the fast? And it's like there isn't a goal. It is itself. It is a practice to be done. And what happens is individual inside your body, and it's mental as well as physical. Like, if your own body also changes, and what it's for is itself, in a sense. And that's what I try to get at in this poem, is to give you that space of unknowing, basically.
And that's really resonant right now. It is a time of unknowing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to meet you.
Yeah, it was great to meet you too. Maybe in person someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. All right.
Bye.
We'll talk later. Bye-bye. What it's for is itself. This episode has raised the intelligence quotient of this show head and shoulders beyond what I ever could have imagined. Two phenomenal professors tonight. Beautiful poetry. A lot of help making sense of these numbers, games, recipes. Thank you all for being here. I'm glad you came along. Be good to yourselves. We'll see you on Thursday. Hunker, hug, haven, and you know what? Hold hands. I love you guys. We'll see you on Thursday.